Can we dispel the thought that politicians have superhuman levels of integrity? That, for whatever reason, they can receive magnificent amounts of cash, but that cash in no way impugns their character, in no way incentivizes them to behave a particular way, even when that way is at odds with their own constituency. Let's talk about incentives. When I do this channel, there's certain incentives that are built into the process, meaning there's certain stories that you're incentivized to do over other stories. You make revenue based off the people who view your content, and in making revenue based off the people who view your content, the more videos that you believe will get more views, going with that, more cash, are incentivized, as opposed to other videos where you won't get more, especially if you're going to put time into the video, less so. So in a story on something that I may want to talk about with the environment, I go into doing that story knowing full well that nobody's going to watch that video. Nobody cares. Everybody knows we're fucked. And even though lefties have an esoteric concern for environmental issues, that for all intents and purposes, they don't need to see a video talking about something that they already know is fucked up. So me doing that video on environment, some people may care, small percentage of people may care, but overall, on the whole, it will go massively unwatched. My patrons pad that, allowing me to do videos like that, meaning because they care about that type of video and that type of content, I can do that without necessarily taking a hit for it. But just based on raw incentives, the incentive is there. It's there. I could do a video on Hillary Clinton every day and make a ton of views because everybody dislikes and hates Hillary Clinton. Build a channel off of it if you want to build a channel off of it. Incentives matter. Agency is there, meaning I as an individual can make the choice, but there is something that is nudging me in a particular direction. Your needs. Now, let's go to this in a political space. What does that look like in a political situation, in our level of politics? Do we believe that our politicians have superhuman integrity? So issues like incentives don't apply. They just function based purely off of what their electorate needs, what's the best thing for their particular constituency, meaning across the country. Meaning they have a constitutional responsibility to look out for the welfare of their people. They're paid by the state to look out for the welfare of their people, to make choices that are in the interests of their populations. Do you believe that they do that? And if so, why? 90% of the candidates who get the most money wins that race. 90%. That number is magnificent. Meaning your main job as a candidate is to raise as much money as you can possibly raise, because 90% of the time, if you get that money, you can drown out your opponent and you can win. There are some that buck the trend, but 90% is a magnificently high number. And if I was going to a casino, I'd bet that shit every time. Now there's this aspect of you that may have a certain degree of agency and may want to work around the edges, but you're still stuck with that reality. You have an oligarchic political system that's not representing your interests per se, in as much as the special interests that give the candidates the money to exceed that bar. I want to make that very plain. Everything that I just said is absolutely true. You function at a level of going towards incentives. That's not just in politics, that's pretty much in everyday life. There's agency that's built into it, but it takes a higher bar to step over in order to allow your agency to rebuff that level of incentive and that drive, that primary instinct. Enter one Marsha Blackburn. Marsha Blackburn is on a show and they're asking her a question about that last, the gun violence that took place in Thousand Oaks. Her answer is shameful. It's understood, but it's profoundly shameful. I would even argue to some degree disgusting. Listen to this. This is the newly minted senator from Tennessee, Marsha Blackburn.
The shooting, this gunman was 29 years old. He drove his mother's car to this bar before he walked in and opened fire, killing 12, including the sergeant who charged in to try to protect those college students, many of these college students, young people. As a senator-elect now, I mean, what can we do? This was the deadliest shooting that we've seen in this country since Parkland. I mean, what do we do?
Yeah. What we do is say, how do we make certain that we protect the Second Amendment and protect our citizens? We've always...
Are you serious? Are you serious? What we do is determine how do we protect the Second Amendment and how do we protect our citizens? That's the first and foremost thing that must be done. 13 people are dead. And this is in the context of multiple mass shootings across the United States. And the first thing that's on Marsha's mind is, how do we protect the Second Amendment? Oh, how shameful. Why is this woman saying such shameful things? There's all sorts of things that you could say. Hey, we need to send prayers. You can send that. That's a Republican talking point. Let's send prayers. That's even a Democratic talking point to some degree. We need to send prayers because you don't want to rock the boat with regards to taking on the gun industry in this sense and head on, because you may alienate some voters who love their guns and I can't let go of my gun. Why is this woman saying this? Is she saying this on her own steam? Is she saying this because of her constituency? Or is it possible that the $1 million that was stuffed into her G-string by the NRA has something to do with her coming out and saying that? Even if you don't think it's the money that's causing it, why do you even want to allow that process to take place? Are we a representative government or not? If it's a situation where 90% of the candidates, or the candidate with 90% of the money wins, then who do you believe that candidate is going to work for? Do you believe they're going to work in your interests or the people who essentially give them cash? Of course they're going to work in the interest of the people who give them cash. It makes all the sense in the world that they were working in the interest of the people that give them cash. Superhuman integrity, my ass. They're getting, in this case, $1 million from the NRA, a massive sum of money for a Senate race. Why do you believe that her response here to a softball question that's asking about people being murdered and slaughtered, where an individual, for whatever reason, whatever his context, she has no idea what's going on with this particular person at this particular point where they're talking about it. And that's her first thought. What would cause an individual? What is the reality that an individual lives in? People eating their Cheerios, playing their Xbox, having sex with their wives, talking to their girlfriend, getting a cappuccino, going to Starbucks. These people, the reality to which we exist, that most of us, that many of us exist. And we have to exist in a similar fashion. Otherwise, we wouldn't understand the other as we are dealing with and interacting. Yes, they may have different political ideologies at times, but this is something different. This is a person who, for whatever reason, whatever context to which he exists, decides to take a weapon and destroy. If it wasn't a gun, it would be a knife, or a box cutter, or a bomb. Yes, gun regulation, good. People are walking around with firearms. There's a percentage of the population that's going to be off their rocker, good. And even with the percentage that's not off their rocker, good. But let's be very clear, there's something else. There's something at the core of that individual that is giving that instinct for violence and mayhem. That's what I want to get at. That's the thing that I want to talk about. The gun violence thing is surface. It's just this overt thing that you can do or that you could throw away that doesn't get to the root cause of why an individual decides that they want to do that. She never touched that. Democrats don't touch that. They don't even try. that would entail challenging the society to which we exist, challenging the culture to which we live in. What is in our culture that creates these monsters? That's a more feral question. Her response: we need to protect gun laws. We need to do everything that we can to protect gun laws. But I know, but people just got killed. We need to protect gun laws, whatever takes place. This woman has gotten 1.25 million from the NRA to get elected. Person with the most cash. Person with the most cash. In Tennessee, Blackburn's endorsement from the NRA mattered. According to Trace, the National Rifle Association spent $1.25 million to help her get elected on Tuesday, including running ads against her opponent. That total was the second most the NRA spent on any race this cycle, trailing only what they spent to Senator-elect John Hawley in his successful campaign to defeat incumbent Claire McCaskill. Money well spent. Money well spent. Clearly, money well spent. That is one of the most shameless answers that I've ever seen. People were massacred, and your response is, we need to protect gun laws. The only reason she's saying that is because this is a pivot to some degree to the NRA, because the NRA wants to protect gun laws, because the NRA wants to sell more guns. The NRA is not in the interest of its members. It's in the interest of selling guns. There's a difference in those things. And in this case, you have a Republican, newly minted senator from Tennessee, that ignores the interests of her constituency. Or you could make a case that the NRA, to some degree, is her constituency. And in the case of a tragedy that keeps happening, mind you, her only response is, we need to protect gun laws, and something about mental health, which is just a way of trying to make it an individual thing, not necessarily something that's sick in the society itself that propagates this particular behavior. You understand that regardless of whether guns are proliferate throughout the society, and yes, they do in America in a ridiculous way, there's something in our society. We have a violent culture. That violent culture propagates itself on television programs and video games. We have a culture that glorifies this thing of strength. I have a gun now, I'm strong. This thing of violence is glorified. What I can guarantee you is there will be another, and another, and another. And people like her will come out and say the exact same thing. The people like Trump will come out and say the exact same thing. And nothing gets accomplished. Why do you want this? Why are you okay with this? Shouldn't you want your politicians, Republican, Democrat, Independent, somewhere in between off the political spectrum, shouldn't you want your politicians representing you? Not the special interests, not having corporations putting money into their pockets and they go out there and parrot this nonsense. Somebody to represent you, even if you care about gun laws or gun rights and protecting your guns and everything else. Why do you believe that her getting 1.25 million is not working in their interest? And for the other people that may want some sensible legislation for gun laws, even if you don't necessarily want the Second Amendment repeal, even if you don't necessarily want them to quote-unquote take away your guns, you want basic common sense restraint for weapons that can literally remove the life from other human beings just like yourself. Why are you okay with a politician taking massive sums of money and representing the interests of them as opposed to representing the interests of you? That's whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. I don't care. Why are you okay with them fucking with your political process in this way, where money is the thing that determines what they do in office? That woman took $1.25 million, and I swear to God that is money well spent. If she's willing to react this shamefully on a question like this after a national tragedy, money well spent. I'll end this here because it's gone over. Thanks, guys. If you enjoyed the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. And you can always support through Patreon. Thanks all.